Simply calculated using charts, based on temperature and humidity or using the dew point. Here's an example using dew point. If it's 100 degrees and the dew point is a sticky 60, then it will feel like 101. But a tropical dew point of 75 degrees will make a 100-degree temperature feel like 114. Here's a fact most people don't know. Heat index charts are based on shady locations. If you're exposed to direct sunlight, the heat index value can be increased up to 10 to 15 degrees. As heat and humidity increase, so does the heat index, or what our bodies think the temperature is. But when our bodies get too hot, you're going to sweat. That sweat will evaporate, which is a cooling process. But warmer air holds more moisture, which only makes it feel hotter. The high moisture content of the air slows the skin's evaporation. This causes our internal temperature to rise, leading to different levels of heat disorders with prolonged exposure. So when's it considered dangerously hot? When heat indices are 90 to 103, it's encouraged to use extreme caution. A heat index from 103 to 124 degrees is at the danger level. Heat cramps or heat exhaustion are likely. In the worst case scenario, heat stroke is possible. Anything 125 plus is extremely dangerous, and heat stroke is highly likely. Wishing you all stay safe and cool, I'm meteorologist Chris Mulcahy with WCNC Charlotte.
WCNC Charlotte. This is Flashpoint, where power and politics collide, and the tough questions get asked and answered.
Thanks for joining us here on Flashpoint. I'm Ben Thompson. Pride Month is wrapping up, and despite lots of progress in recent years, the fight for gay rights and trans rights continues in our state capitol, in our nation's capital, and in our classrooms. There's an ongoing tug of war between those wanting to embrace and celebrate the LGBTQ community and those who do not. Today's fight more than 50 years in the making. Back in June 1969, police raided the Stonewall Inn and a popular gay bar in New York's Greenwich Village. At the time, homosexuality was considered criminal. It was common for police to raid bars like Stonewall. But this raid led to riots over the next 6 days. Well, every June after that, people took to the streets to march for equality. And by the way, the first Pride here in Charlotte happened 40 years ago. Joining us today, Matt Comer, the communications director for Charlotte Pride. Matt, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
All right. So tell me, on this Pride Month, are you more or are you less optimistic about gay rights than you were, say, 1 or 2 years ago?
You know, I think our community certainly is experiencing challenges right now, especially the transgender community, and that's something that we really need to be paying attention to. But at the same time, I really am optimistic because we have spent so many of the past past decade, building a really strong, powerful community. We are resilient. We are united. So I think we'll be able to overcome any challenge thrown our way.
One of the things that's made news recently is House Bill 755, known as the Parents' Bill of Rights, up in Raleigh, stalled right now in the House there. Doesn't appear that there's the votes there to overcome what would be a governor's veto of it. But it would basically restrict any LGBTQ instruction in elementary schools. Some have compared it to Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. What is your assessment of this? Is this basically just like the Florida bill, same intent, same sort of goal here, or is there a difference that you can tell?
I think it's exactly the same intent. It would silence or at least chill speech from students, teachers, parents. But there's actually a worse part of the bill. The bill would also require school personnel to forcibly out LGBTQ students, again, especially trans students who might be using a different name or different pronouns. But I mean, there's also a risk, for example, that if a closeted student wants to go to an LGBTQ student organization at a middle school or a high school, they could be forcibly outed to their parent. So it's pretty extreme.
And people, I think, sometimes forget that not all kids out there have supportive home lives, and we also know that LGBTQ teens disproportionately consider suicide for partially that reason, which is to the point you're making. Devil's advocate, though, if you're talking about the younger kids, kindergarten through third grade, I don't remember anything coming up in my youth at that age as far as instruction when it comes to gay or trans issues. Is this much ado about nothing?
No, I don't think so, because I think that every person has a sexual orientation and a gender identity. And these kind of conversations around families are going to be silenced or chilled. So is a kindergartner with two moms or a kindergartner with two dads going to be able to discuss their family vacation when they come back from summer break? And I certainly don't think that the state is going to be telling schools that they can't read books that feature a mom and dad as the head of the family. You know, that represents a sexuality, a gender, two people's gender expression. So I think it will have a real effect, especially on children who have LGBTQ parents and of course, LGBTQ teachers themselves.
Yeah, it can fall both ways there when you start talking about sexuality and gender, and that can also mean heterosexuality. Last year, the city of Charlotte finally passed its non-discrimination ordinance. It was several years in the making after trying to do it 5 or 6 years ago. Why is it important that a city like Charlotte has that?
You know, Charlotte is the largest city in the Carolinas. We're also home to the largest population of LGBTQ people who are employed across a wide variety of industries. We want to keep our city strong. We want to keep our city vibrant. Beyond just the bare necessity of ensuring people have the right to go to work and not be fired or harassed because of who they are. If we're living in a city where a significant percentage of the city could be fired at any moment, that's not going to make our city stronger or healthier.
This is Flashpoint, so we do talk politics, but I think when it comes to some of these issues, people should be skeptical about politicians and their motives in these things, and what some people call culture wars. Other people just say, no, those are just my rights. That said, I do think there are good people on either side of some of these issues, and some people who might not understand some of the other issues. My point in all of this is that I feel like politics really murkies the water and makes things a lot worse for a lot of people, which I think Brene Brown is the one who said it's hard to hate people up close. And I think, how do you overcome that? Because I feel like there's some good people who might not know a gay person, who might not know a trans person, who finds it a lot easier to sort of malign them by not knowing them, when if they just knew a person, that would go a long way in solving a lot of these things. And yes, politicians will still try to capitalize on it, but just human-to-human contact would really help in this situation. But what do you do about that? How do you make that happen?
Well, I mean, Ben, I think you're exactly right. Homophobia, transphobia for centuries has always been based on a fear of the unknown. And it's very easy for politicians to play this game, this politics of fear. Because your average, run-of-the-mill citizen or resident responds powerfully to things they don't know about, or just fear in general. We do know, and we've seen this in the LGBTQ rights movement over many decades, that the more and more people who meet and know an LGBTQ family member, friend, coworker, that begins to soften hearts and minds, because people just want to love and be kind to their family, friends, neighbors. And so once people are confronted with the reality that someone close to them is also LGBTQ, it takes it from a talking point on Twitter to something that is immediately affecting their close relationships. So I think that's why things like pride events are important, because it gives an opportunity for the community to be out in public.
Many of them we sat with for hours on end across the country, so many we've gotten to know who lost their souls to an epidemic of gun violence. They lost their child, their husband, their wife. Nothing is going to fill that void in their hearts. But they led the way, so other families will not have the experience and the pain and trauma that they had to live through. From Columbine to Sandy Hook to Charleston, Orlando, Las Vegas, Parkland, El Paso, Atlanta, Buffalo, Uvalde. And for the shootings that happen every day in the streets that are mass shootings that we don't even hear about. The number of people killed every day in the streets. Their message to us was, do something. I don't know how many times we heard that. Just do something. For God's sake, just do something. Well, today, we did. While this bill doesn't do everything I want, It does include actions I've long called for that are going to save lives. It funds crisis intervention, including red flag laws. It keeps guns out of the hands of people who are a danger to themselves and to others. And it finally closes what is known as the boyfriend loophole. So if you assault your boyfriend or girlfriend, you can't buy a gun or own a gun. It requires young people aged 18 to 21 to undergo enhanced background checks. It includes the first ever federal law that makes gun trafficking and straw purchases distinct federal crimes for the first time. It clarifies who needs to register as a federally licensed gun dealer and run background checks before selling a single weapon. You know, this also provides historic funding to address youth mental health crisis in this country, especially the trauma experienced by the survivors of this gun violence. Look, it invests in anti-violence programs that work directly with the people who are most likely to commit these crimes or become victims of gun crimes. Today, we say more than enough. We say more than enough. It's time, when this seems impossible to get anything done in Washington, we are doing something consequential. If we can reach compromise on guns, we ought to be able to reach compromise on other critical issues, from veterans health care to cutting-edge American innovation and so much more. I know there's much more work to do, and I'm never going to give up, but this is a monumental day. God bless us with the strength to continue to work, to get the work that's left undone done, and the lives lost that can't be saved, that are obviously gone, but will be an inspiration for us to do more. I'm not going to sign this bill into law. God willing, it's going to save a lot of lives. Thank you all so very much.
Mr. President, we take a couple questions.
Thanks. I have a helicopter waiting for me to take off. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about a lot of this.
Do you think the Supreme Court is broken, in your view?
I think the Supreme Court has made some terrible decisions.
These decisions made from the Supreme Court.
Will you reconsider your previous opposition to expanding the court, sir? What about term limits for justices?